All right. Today we have Brian FLYNN. Brian, you're the founder, creator, owner of Two Wolf Foundation with a partner, if I'm correct here.
Yep.
Yeah. You spent 13 years active duty. You're now part time, still in the SUF world. You were Green Beret before. Now you're pushing through helping post traumatic growth. It's a pleasure to have you, obviously. I mean, if people don't know your story, I mean, you type your name, Brian FLYNN. I looked it up myself on Spotify. You are everywhere.
Hmm.
Right now, you're in Montana. And you and I connected, I would say probably a year ago, because you're all about outdoor. And I found the same thing with Wire Differently, where the grounding effect for post traumatic growth is wonderful. So for the one who don't know you, for the Canadians who don't know you, by all means, give us a quick pedigree. Um, we all love your mustache because, I mean, like I said, every podcast I heard, they all talk about your mustache. I'll do the same.
It's it must be one of your signatures, eh?
Yeah.
So if you're going to
It's,
give us your quick pedigree, and then we're going to jump on, we have a bunch of questions for you, and nothing related to the mustache itself, though.
I
We'll let
appreciate
we'll let the mustache do his own interview another time. How about that?
Yeah, we joke about eventually it's going to need its own Instagram page, I guess.
Yeah,
100%.
that's good.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on tonight. Brian FLYNN, as was stated, 13 years active duty, spent most of that time with the United States Army Special Forces, operating as a Green Beret, multiple deployments overseas, and around 2014, separated from the military, wasn't ready to totally cut ties and continue to work for the Army in a couple different capacities. Worked as a Army SEER school instructor for a number of years, and then an operations and intelligence and analyst for a program called Joint Trauma Analysis and Prevention of Injury in Combat. And we studied casualty producing events and, really tried to pick apart all variables that were involved that led to some form of casualty on the battlefield, and then looked at solutions to be able to try to mitigate those injuries. But in that separation from the military, as is a common story told, there is struggle involved. Stepping out into the real world and feeling as if you've had your identity stripped away, a loss of purpose or a loss of mission, and most importantly was a loss of belonging, feeling like you had, or I had lost my connection to my tribe, and you're out there ready to battle it on your own, and it can be tough. And I went through a number of years where I didn't handle that very well, and struggled silently, struggled greatly, and tried to self-medicate and isolate, and eventually found a calling to the outdoors. I had been a lifelong outdoorsman, but walking amidst struggle and pain, you're blind to all of the resources around you. You're blind to the things that make you feel better, that promote health and wellness.
Mm-hmm.
But eventually I turned a corner and stepped into the world of outdoor recreation, stewardship, and conservation, recognizing that as much time as I spent outside that made me feel better, began to pick apart the problems that those places were facing, and ultimately wanted to adopt a new mission. And that was serving the outdoors and to create sustainable places that those who are struggling can go to heal.
Oh man, you just I have to cross off about 8 of my questions now. That was quite the bio. You answered 45 minutes worth of interview. You know what? I have the same kind of upbringing as you, being sort of immersed in the outdoors, and I was thankful enough to never lose it. Was it just because you were busy being deployed that you kind of disconnected from nature at first? And then what was the catalyst? What was the thing that finally got you back in there once you took the uniform off?
I mean, losing connection to the outdoors, I know that coming home from deployments, just between a busy op cycle of training and schools and prep for the next deployment, there's not a lot of downtime within special operations. But during that time frame where I was still wearing the uniform, I was out with other dudes. We were out fishing at the lake and camping and stuff like that. It was when I just wanted to feel sorry for myself, I think, more than anything. I wanted to take my circumstances and, cry me a river, have a pity party, and just make excuses of why I wasn't going and doing things that had always been a healthy outlet for stress. And I couldn't really tell you why, other than just self-abuse in the midst struggling.
What was the avoidance pattern that you had?
I would say I just used work as the excuse. Committed to whatever job that I had assumed after I was out of uniform, whether I was a SEER school instructor or working the intel job, using that as the excuse that when I would come home, I just didn't have time for, anything else. And that allowed me just to sit at home and stew on where I felt my life wasn't going. And we can talk for hours about the struggle that I faced the most was once separating from service, comparing myself to what I saw others achieving success, and then just harboring this horrible internal feeling that I wasn't going anywhere.
Yeah, isn't it? It's strange, because we're in this environment where there's a lot of police and military that we talk with. And I know that you've probably been interviewed by ex-special forces and you've had many conversations with real high-flying individuals. And it's so funny. And I think about this in my 19-year police career when I look back. It's so funny that this victim mentality can creep up on all of us when we're such, I'll take you and John, for example, because you guys got way high up in the military. I didn't. I've been just a policeman. That's like you're the tip of the spear, as the proverbial saying goes. And yet, if you're not careful, you find this, like you're talking about, this victimhood, this self-loathing that creeps up on you. You don't even realize that you're being victimized by yourself. So I wonder, were you prepared for that acknowledgement when you finally realized it? Like, oh my God, what am I doing to myself? I'm a frickin' Green Beret. And here I am, because it's a surprise. And I'm not calling anybody down for it. It really is just a matter of, wow, it was like deer in the headlights moment for me when I recognized that I was doing that to myself. Meanwhile, I had all these tools laid out before me that were like power weapons of authority, and yet I couldn't get myself out of my own baloney. I wonder did you have a feeling like that?
I would say I did not. I was just so blinded by feeling like I wasn't continuing to achieve success. If I had operated at such a high level in my career and was constantly aspiring to achieve the next qualification, the next certification, and whatever the team needed, whatever the mission needed, and then when those things would be accomplished, you're filled with this incredible sense of accomplishment. And when that was stripped away, I feel like it was more akin to the idea or the analogy of just treading water. No matter how much effort I was putting in, I wasn't gaining any ground. I wasn't going anywhere. And on the victimhood idea, I would say that it has just become so commonplace to just accept that, man, there were some things that I went through that were not very fun. There was a lot of pain and sadness and loss associated with that. One of my best friends committed suicide within a month of me separating from the military. And we had so many countless other iterations of guys within the unit just going off the rails, right? Losing. I mean, here was individuals that were just so incredibly well-respected, good at their job, family-oriented individuals that couldn't get out of their own way, just dove headfirst into the darkness and weren't able to come out the other side of it. And as an individual that saw myself wading into the deep end, you just almost are conditioned to accept it. That, man, the things that we went through, global war on terror, the global war on terror, GWAT veteran, you guys have experienced incredibly horrible things, seen the worst that mankind and humanity has to offer. And now reintegration back into civilian life is going to be impossible. You're never going to be the individual that you were. And that was what the introduction and education that I received on post-traumatic growth gave me an opportunity to change my perspective on what I had experienced, and said, you're right. The things that I experienced will never allow me to go back to the person that I was. But if I take stock of those experiences and recognize that there are incredible gifts and wisdom and strengths gained having endured it, man, that's empowering. And it's just a change of mindset to look at the hard things that people have to go through and say, well, if I made it through that, I'm ready to take on whatever's coming next.
Absolutely.
Yeah. See, I love the expression you said of treading water, right? Because I see it as when you are in, you're floating, right? It's like you're on ski and water and you're just floating, you're going through, because the speed and the pace of life is so high with between, like, the training schedule of the 4 months. I don't know how you guys worked, but let's say there's cycles, right? There's training, there's recovery, and then the deployment, which never end, right? It's year on after on. I found that when you remove that uniform, I went from 200 kilometers an hour, 160 miles an hour or 120 miles an hour to 0, where now you're not on top of the water flying, you're treading water.
Yeah.
Because all your buddies are gone. They're still ongoing with the same pace, right? You made the choice of stepping back, which sometimes can bring regrets. And I mean, you're alone, so you're stuck into your own mind. And I think that's when the guilt or victimhood comes in, right? Because you have way too much time to think, which you never took before.
Yeah. I know that, another aspect of it for me in that transition struggle was that throughout my career, I was enabled to experience adventure, the next great thing, the traveling around to different schools, new people, new experiences, new learning opportunities. And all of that was facilitated by your unit or, the military in general, period. Once it was on me, having experienced a lifetime of adventurous stuff, within the special operations community, I was on a mountain team for a number of years where, we would fly to Colorado and be out there for 3 weeks, climbing 14,000 foot peaks every day and base camping at, 12,000 feet for a week as a team, and just living out in the woods. And all of that was facilitated to increase, our training proficiency. But then when I was out of uniform, man, all I had was memories.
Yeah.
And looking at, like, man, I would love to be able to go do something like that again, but I don't have the bankroll to be able to go do that. Nor the equipment and that stuff, all of it just factors in. And then it just harbors this, like, well, I guess this is, I guess surfing Netflix tonight is about as good as it's going to get.
But the positive of all of this, because I've had a chance to kind of study a little bit, is although you left the uniform, you found some incredible wisdom in your life, and you started to use that to help other people. And I'd like to move now to Two Wolf Foundation and what you're doing now currently, because I think you've been able to take all of the tools from your time in the special forces, and now you're helping the veterans to reconnect with themselves through nature, which for me, there's nothing greater, because I'm like you. I was born and raised being in nature. So now you're operating and serving as one of the co-founders of Two Wolf Foundation. I'd like you to kind of give us an overview of that, because it's an incredible program. I've only just kind of scratched the surface through your Instagram and some of the news stories, but you've really come a long way, and you're putting all your wisdom into something really incredible and beautiful to help save veterans and first responders. So tell me all about it.
Yeah, so the general overview of what Two Wolf Foundation does is organizes small teams of combat veterans and first responders to go and serve in a public land stewardship or conservation project as a team over the course of a week, experiencing dispersed camping and some fishing, some hiking, whatever outdoor recreation that we can work into it. But the end state is that there's a mission to accomplish. And so it's bringing these former service members and public safety individuals together to work as a team, accomplish a mission, and experience nature in a way where it's fulfilling. They're giving themselves to it and serving again. And we decided to incorporate the use of overlanding or vehicle supported adventure as it was more logistics than anything. The world of overlanding with rooftop tents and incredibly, tricked out off-road trucks, the real magic is the self-reliance in it, the ability to travel over extended distances in remote environments and sustain yourself or the group of people that you're with. So we have transportation and we have lodging is essentially what we built into a vehicle package, very similar to some military operations that I was familiar with, long distance, multi-day convoy ops. And in working with public land managers, we're able to access some of the most incredible wilderness areas and connect to nature in a way that leaves you feeling refreshed. It rejuvenates a sense of belonging by being with a team. And then again, that sense of accomplishment when you commit to action. And that's really what Two Wolf Foundation and the name was all about. I talked about some of the struggles that I had, self-loathing and just feeling sorry for myself. The story of the two wolves or the battle within, maybe some of the listeners out there are familiar with that, but in a very brief way, the story talks about a battle going on inside each and every person. And that's a battle between good and evil. That's, a tale as old as time. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But in that story and the way that it's told, there's a young man that asks his grandfather, well, which side wins? Which wolf wins? And the grandfather replies, the one you feed. It's a choice. Mm-hmm. And that was my turning point when I was rearmed with the power of choice, regardless of my circumstances, that I had the power to choose what I was going to do next. And if that meant that I was going to reestablish contact with those that meant the most to me and say, hey, let's do something of meaning and purpose and value, let's go do it.
Not only that, right? A little bit. One wolf do not survive in the wilderness, not for long. If they're out of the pack, they will not survive. And usually when they're kicked out, let's go with that, because I don't know the perfect term. Probably in French, I know, but not in English. But if they're kicked out, they're not allowed back, but they're not going to be fed. They're not going to so all that security and so on will not happen. So personally, when I looked at what you were doing, the two wolf made totally sense. You cannot survive alone and that kind of darkness. I guess it's the best way I can put it in simple. Where the two wolf, at least you have a form of support. Someone has your back.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that in the time that we have been conducting operations through Two Wolf Foundation, the most powerful element of what we do, and we break it into 3 pillars: connect, serve, and grow. And the connection piece is all about reestablishing a sense of belonging. There's connect to nature, connect to self, and connect to others. The connect to others has been the most absolutely powerful aspect of these trips that we organize and the projects that we go and work on, is that sense of belonging. And I use the word tribe a lot in every conversation I have with people about why this matters so much to me. It's the tribe. It's the group of individuals that have a shared sense of suffering, that have a shared sense of experience that brings them together, that in an environment like nature, when you're around a group of people that you feel you belong to, you're able to share things that you wouldn't feel comfortable sharing with others, with your, even your significant other, your spouse or your best friend in your workplace. It's just not the same. And the connection piece and the tribe mentality is everything. I mean, it drives everything that we do.
And it's
Yeah.
been proven too. I'm sorry, Jay.
No, it's okay.
It's been proven on many ways, right? A lot of vets and Canada and US are similar on those kind of studies, but it was released by Sebastian Jungen, where he said that in the problem that we have with veterans, combat veterans coming back from overseas, is they realize that nobody understands. Right, so the percentage of mental health injuries and so on is extremely high. Canada and US were the same, and UK and whatever the Five Eyes we're scoring the same thing, right? Which is around 25 to 35% of the population in the military have mental health injuries. Now, the interesting part with this, which is the tribe that you're talking about, where in history they related about it quite often with Native or Aboriginal, they also recently they did a study in Israel as an example where the average is 1.6% of PTSD. And the reason why is it so low, it's because everyone has to serve. So when you come back home, you're not the stranger, the overly the stigma is not there because everyone understands what you've been through and how hard it can get and the hardship and so on. So it's accepted and it's recognized. Versus here, we come back into a world where sometimes people are totally disconnected. And I would put it with Leos as well, because I believe that every time you leave your district, your police station or whatever that is, you become operational. I mean, it's and I mean, US, you see it where more cops are hunted, way more than we have that here. But we have had a bad year in Canada recently. I mean, how many cops who have been falsely called and killed? So it's a similar aspect, right? When you come back home and you realize that nobody connects or realize it, even our spouse, right? Our spouse understand that we were gone. I understand the sacrifice, and they make a sacrifice. I think it's important to say it. But they will never feel what it feels like, right? So it's hard to leave that community or to find a new one that will get it.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, there's something like what you're saying, John, is something that I was going to ask you, Brian, because you probably know this, and I just want to see if this is built into it or if it's just natural. But there's something innate. Like you used the word tribe, and it couldn't be any better because that's what we used to be. It wasn't that long ago that we were all tribesmen and women. We all lived in little connected tribes. And there's got to be something innate about that. And you've experienced this many times, Brian. I'm sure you have too, John. But there's just something so naturally correct about sitting around a fire in the dark and sharing wisdom. And I'm wondering if that is, if you can speak on this. I'm wondering, because this call to adventure that you had in Special Forces and that feeling of losing it when you walked away, I'm wondering if there is something that you're sensing in the guys and gals that you're working with, if they feel a new fulfillment through this program, that they're realizing that there is another way to have a call to adventure, and there is another way to find connection through these little tribes of people that are, like John said, that are understanding of you because they walked in combat boots, right? They're sharing similar ethos as you are.
Yeah, I would say the experiential education that comes along with the Two Wolf Foundation programming the hope, right, is that we expose them to this idea of overlanding or really fancy car camping, and have some discussions about the fact that this is not unattainable. The experience that that is so motivating to have another grand adventure to experience and to create positive new memories, you can take that back and now reignite all of the skills that were developed during a lifetime or a career of uniformed service, mission planning, logistics, preparation, execution. All the aspects can be poured into the next grand adventure that you experience now in your life. And the hope is that it's tied to outdoor and nature immersion, that these public or these natural places provide such a sense of relief and grounding and calmness and wonder and awe and joy that, man, it's like, okay, we plant the seed, we provide the experience. There's some learning curve aspect to it, and then figure out where, when's the next grand adventure, and that encouragement is that they take that back and begin, planning that epic road trip with their family.
Which state do you do it? Like there must be more than one state, right?
Yeah. So up to date, we have done 4 warrior stewardship trips to Arizona, Montana, Idaho, and Utah. Originally, when I developed the concept for what this warrior stewardship program would look like, the idea is that it would focus on Montana, Wyoming, and Idaho, which is, I think, 57 million acres of public access land, and a whole lot of work that needs to get done to help protect and conserve and sustain these places. But as word's gotten out about what we're doing, the opportunities have broadened, and now, we are fortunate to have outlook projects across the entirety of the West.
Wow.
Awesome. I want to know, when you're talking about these stewardship projects that you're doing, what do they entail? Because at first, when I was hearing about this, I was thinking, okay, it's just some guys that are going to go hunting and fishing together. But that's not, there's not necessarily anything real deep about that. These are actual effortful and meaningful conservation projects. So tell me about the things that you guys do when you're going to these various locations.
Yeah. So my goal is to create a very diversified approach to conservation and stewardship of public land experience. So we've done everything from hiking trail maintenance and improvement to sensitive and historical site protection, building split rail fencing around an old 1800s trading post out in the middle of the woods that's within a wilderness area to protect and preserve that. Down in Moab, participated in the protection of fossilized dinosaur footprints within the stones and the rock.
That's very cool.
And one of the projects in Idaho, a team worked to remove very damaging user-created trails within public lands. Right, there is a published motor vehicle use plan and a map that accompanies that is, hey, these are the authorized trails for you to recreate on within a given designated public land space. But when irresponsible users begin venturing off trail, and once that first ATV, side by side, pickup truck, whatever it is, once they make that first trail, the next recreationist comes down and sees, oh, it looks like we can go this way, and now they're beating it down even more. Well, there was an area that we went and helped rehab that was big game habitat. It was a meadow that was extremely important wintering grounds for the elk herds that are in that area, and some water crossings that were destroying the bull creek or bull trout habitat. And so by going in and sanitizing those user-created trails, reestablishing and improving the big game habitat, and then protecting those valuable watersheds for spawning bull trout. So, it's pretty varied. My hopes are moving forward that we're going to be involved in some more big game habitat management stuff, working on mule deer and elk habitat improvement projects. We are working on a project for next year with an organization called Project Healing Waters, which focuses on introducing veterans to fly fishing as an outlet or a resource for stress reduction.
Is there not another Green Beret who has a fly fishing business?
I don't know.
I think he's in Virginia or North Carolina. One or
Okay.
the other. Yeah.
Yeah. Project Healing Waters has chapters in almost every state. They're all across the country. And so I'm working on building a specialized mission team that will take on like 16 days on the road, living out of our overland trucks and participating in a wide range of stewardship projects that address all of the concerns that a lot of our public land fisheries face. Doing that in partnership with another nonprofit organization that facilitates and introduces veterans to fly fishing is just, it seems like a great opportunity for two organizations to serve a greater purpose together and have an impact. And I'm really excited about what that project could look like.
It's cool.
Man. Yeah. You know what's funny? The one thing I didn't hear, and I suppose that there's a little cynicism in this. I'm surprised that you guys haven't started connecting with the DNR to use all of the tools that you have to support the DNR in catching poachers and guys that are going out and fishing at night. It's I like I said, there's some cynicism in here because then you're kind of getting right back into that military type of environment where there's weapons and the danger of, a firefight or whatever. However, I just was thinking, like you got all these amazing guys with all these awesome tools and abilities. It would be incredible actually that you guys could join forces with the DNR and do some sort of civilian overwatch with them in order to try and gather intel and help them in the unlawful harvest of animals, because you guys you hunt humans. It's way easier to figure out how people are hunting animals.
I have sat my fair share of time in a hide site overwatching different objectives, and I would say I probably wouldn't pass up that opportunity to get back out and down into a hide site for a while.
I don't know. I'm sure there's some crazy bureaucracy and logistics that would be involved in that kind of operation, but it's just a thought that I had. I don't know if that's anything that's even possible, but pretty interesting.
There's a team who does that in US. I think they're either at MARSOC, Green Beret, or something. But they go over Africa and they hunt actually poacher.
Right? I know the group that goes down to Africa and is assisting with the poaching of exotic animal type.
Not as much red tape over there for logistic planning.
Well, it depends for weapons, right? Like you cannot enter every country in Africa with weapons.
Yeah.
I had guys.
I know that it's incredible the work that they've done, but I don't know how well that fly here in state. But a bunch of randos just rally up in trucks and start popping out of the woods and questioning folks.
Yeah, that might play, right? See, this is what they were saying. I was watching a documentary lately. It's other countries are not so afraid of the military of Canada, US, and so on. They're afraid of the people who have guns in the country more than anything else.
Well, it's like they say, there's nobody's ever going to walk into the United States and take it over, and it's not because of the military. It's because of all of the people that have guns, and everybody does. And you've got 400 million people, and half of them own a lot of guns. So nobody's taking you over anytime soon.
Bye, California.
Go ahead, John. I had another question. Go ahead, John. You were going to say something.
Oh, I did say something. He heard me. But yeah, no, it's super interesting. And I mean, so if someone wants to go with you guys, like, is there a process? Is there a selection? Like, how does it work?
So one of the elements, we've been doing this for just over a year. And one of the elements that was extremely important to me was seeing vested ownership from the original team and following each consecutive or successive team, the way that we've been managing how to populate these warrior stewardship teams is that once you complete or are part of a project, part of the ownership is on that team to identify their replacements and building out the next life that they touch and that they engage with and that they recognize, man, I've got somebody in my life that I think would need that week being a part of a team again, serving another mission. And maybe it's just that breather, that, that opportunity to take a pause on whatever stress they're facing and go on another epic adventure. So we've been managing it a little bit, or mostly that way, is relying on individuals from the very first pilot team to identify their replacements, fill the next seat. My hope moving forward is that we can develop relationships with some other incredible organizations that are out there providing clinical care programs, individuals that recognize that the way that they were going about things and managing post-traumatic stress, dealing with depression, anxiety, separation stress, just general mental health struggles, and made the decision to seek help and begin to turn their life around. My hope is that we can develop a referral system with some of those other organizations that are providing clinical care so that we can step in and become an advocate for the peer-to-peer support network building.
Nice.
So I'm curious about that then. So just out of curiosity, because I don't know how it works in US, can a psychologist be serving, let's say, in Montana and Idaho at the same time, or they need to register in every single state?
I don't know.
Funny question, isn't it?
Yeah. I believe that, with the appropriate certifications and federal license requirements, that they have the ability to, provide care. I'm sure there's some state level management aspects that are required, but ideally there's a few programs within the country that I recognize are doing incredible work in changing people's lives. What Two Wolf Foundation wants to be is that continued engagement, continue to promote growth, continue to encourage growth. And we do that by building that connection and network amongst peers, bringing groups together, being able to discuss, hey, been going through therapy, went through treatment, ended up in a VA program that was helping me get my life back on track. Here's the things that haven't been working, and being able to sit around the campfire and have a discussion about what's working, what's not working, why, and then what small tweaks or changes, maybe could be made that just continue to orient the glide path appropriately.
And there's huge value to it. I mean, I'm just thinking peer support, period, right? Without pushing it. I remember my first one, and I was talking with someone, and I'm like, "You take that medication as well?" She's like, "Yeah, I do." I'm like, "Does your leg shake at night after you took it?" And she's like, "It does." And then there's another guy who had no clue who he was, right? And he just walks in and he's like, "It does that to me too." Like, stupid medication. And it did for a year after we stopped, but we all had, right? Like, you learn that way. Then you're not a monster, or you're not odd, or you're not that weird person who's thinking that it is alone, right? And I think that's the biggest value in it.
Yeah, there's a massive benefit to being around people that know what you're going through because they've experienced it. I'm wondering, Brian, do you guys have anything that's like built into your program where you actually do some form of therapy together? And I don't mean like clinical therapy, but is there any sort of nuanced emotional therapy that you guys do sort of in the downtime where you actually do sit around and talk in a circle, sort of in a therapeutic way, or does that just naturally happen because you're around each other?
More often than not, it just happens naturally. I would say that, if you were to look at the individuals that we're attempting to reach out to and be a part of this experience, every one of those individuals has recognized that they were suffering, they were struggling, and they decided to make a change, and they began to dedicate themselves to growth, to overcoming rather than self-loathing. And in that, when you bring a group of people together that are all growth oriented, the conversation doesn't need to be dictated. It happens. Now, obviously, we are focused on a small team mentality. So 6 individuals committing to each other for a week to rely on each other to get the job done, to conduct operations in the stewardship project aspects safely and responsibly, and then camp life, all the chores and responsibilities of cooking and cleaning and pack up and set up and all that stuff. You got to work together. And that in and of itself promotes communication.
Yep.
Once the work's done and it's time to sit down around the fire, it really comes down to the personalities, right? Some people are going to be more open than others. Some people are going to be more willing to share than others. The only thing that I can hope for is that we just give them the opportunity. It's there. But I am not a big proponent of like, okay, let's facilitate a guided discussion. It's not me. What I want to see is I want to see people come together and recognize the opportunity that they have and take advantage of it. And if they don't, it's a life lesson later on. At some point, they're going to look back on it and they're going to go, damn, I wish I would have opened my mouth.
Yeah.
I wish I would.
Some people just take from it too, right? Like they don't have to, and this is what I've seen as well, either therapy or peer support or group support or whatever we're going to call it. People takes a lot just by listening, right? Because there is a lot of people who don't speak, right? Those are trades, are jobs that people don't speak feelings. It's not a language. And by all means, it needs to be. But I said that in a group not a long time ago, but feelings are not needed at war, right? Because they makes you fail. It makes you doubt, question, or whatever you want to call it. So that's not needed. Yeah. And I think that's where the injury really comes up. It's when the flow of feelings come in, because if it's been closed for so long, the flow is going to be pressured out, and then we don't know what to do with it. And that's a surprise.
You can imagine it like this, and Brian, I'm sure you spent lots of time in a boat. If you're driving in a boat, even at 10 miles an hour, you can pull the plug in the boat and you ain't going to take on any water until you stop, right? Yeah. And it's kind of like the same thing that happens in the military and maybe to a small degree in the policing world. If you're going 200 miles an hour, you're never going to notice the holes in the floor of your boat because the water ain't coming in until you stop. And then you start to sink. And so, you've got to keep going forward. You've got to keep moving. And the people that are in the military and to some degree in the policing world, we're frozen up here.
No, well, just you.
Okay. Well, anyways, I'll keep talking. I don't know what's going on. Not a lot of them. You can't sell a lot of them a specific way. Like John just said, not a lot of them are interested in the huggy, kissy, feely kind of therapy, and that's fine. That has its place. And group therapy, where there's an instructor who starts it off and says, "Today we're going to talk about X." That has its place too, and there's people that really benefit from that. But the people that I've learned from, and the people that I've met recently within the Special Forces community and the military community at large, they're not like that. It's kind of like trying to do therapy on men that you would do on women. It's just not accurate. Whereas if you just do it naturally, like you said, Brian, when it just sort of naturally comes out, it seems to be that's the thing that you can sell to the guys and girls in this community, because I think that's just a more natural place for them.
Yeah, I would say that there's nothing more impacting than recognizing you're around a group of people that you can be yourself, period. Mm-hmm. And whether that means, man, I'm about to just let it out to you guys, and I hope you're ready, or being comfortable enough to just not have anything to say and being okay with that.
Yeah.
And then, with regard to Wolf, a lot of it can just be okay to just be there to get stuff done, to invest yourself into something of meaning and purpose and value, and be committed to getting the mission done, that you're going to take something away from that. You're going to get something out of it.
Yeah.
And if that's all you get out of it, that can be enough.
Yeah. You'll get there, Jay. I mean, the frozen picture is great. So just say,
There we go.
there you go.
Technical difficulty out here in the middle of nowhere because my internet sucks. Oh well, we're back. Yeah, I heard you, Brian. Sorry, I was just trying to get my camera going. I apologize for that. I wanted to ask you something quick about all of the skills you've learned in the Special Forces. Do you feel like you've been able to kind of retool them? You know, at a lower velocity, it seems like what you're talking about, I could almost go into a manual, like the soft manual, and I could kind of pick out all of the different things. And instead of doing it with bullets flying at you, now you're doing it in a different way, but with the same tools. Do you agree with that? Is there something that you've done where you think you've retooled a lot of your previous purposes and your
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
It was a realization to me. There was a couple years ago when I was really having a hard time with who I was, what I was doing with my life, and what direction it was going. I had come across a documentary on an individual that had hiked the Pacific Crest Trail. It runs from Mexico to Canada, over 2,000 miles. And there's these individuals that take on hiking this 2,000 plus mile through hike from start to finish, from Mexico to Canada. And it looks incredible. And I have somehow convinced myself that I think I just needed some trail therapy. I wanted to backpack from Mexico to Canada, and the amount of time that it would take me to do that, I'd figure myself out. And I became obsessed with it. I never hiked the PCT, but what I learned was it had oriented my mind back into everything I had learned in the military with mission planning, preparation, physical fitness, all the aspects that made a successful soldier were now lining me up to be able to accomplish this great feat. The Two Wolf programming is that times 10. That goes into it because we utilize vehicles and a lot of different varied pieces of equipment, and we have external partners. Everything that I did within the special operations community, it almost sits hand in hand on my day-to-day actions are almost what I feel like I did when I was in the military, developing the plans and the projects that we're going to be working on, identifying the individuals that need to become prepared for this upcoming mission, how we're going to maneuver, when, where, what we need, and then the execution, mission command. All the trucks are outfitted with, with radios. And so we're talking truck to truck en route and during movement. We've got, checkpoints that we're working to get toward, fuel stops, and then all of the pre-mission planning and reconnaissance that, whether utilizing satellite imagery and other mapping resources, it all factors in. I'm like, man, I'm right back in the team room getting ready for the next op. Yeah,
I was just thinking that because I've kind of done this myself, and I think John, to a certain degree, and a whole lot of other people I've spoken to, you just created yourself a little military base called Two Wolf Foundation, and now you're the Master Chief, and you're running it and I apologize, I don't know a whole lot of military lingo, but you're just you're doing a new operation, but it's great, man, because you're helping people. It's awesome, and I'm walking away from the police world because of the PTSD stuff. Yet I still find sort of a desperate need to serve in some way. And I think that you kind of alluded to that at the beginning, that you had to find a different way to serve outside of the uniform, outside of your identity as a Green Beret. And so this has kind of brought that to you. But why throw all your awesome tools away? Why throw your training away when you can just advance it to the next thing that you're doing and use those tools? And so I found myself doing that by reaching out and helping people in a different way than you do, because we have different skill sets and different tools. But I just think that's profound, because in that way, you're adding a level of comfort to all these people that are going there because they're going back into an environment that feels similar.
Yeah.
Do you get that kind of feedback from the guys and gals that are coming into your program?
Yeah, the service component, right, was born from the idea that, man, there are a lot of incredible programs out there. There are a lot of amazing people that just want to help and give somebody an opportunity to feel joy and happiness and be around people that maybe, aren't judging them, or just give them space. Personally, my own personality would not allow me to ever take advantage of any of those resources that exist, because I am so compelled to want to invest my time and effort to make a difference and to have purpose in it. And so the stewardship and the conservation aspect, the giving ourselves to a cause greater than oneself, is directly in line with the ideology of post-traumatic growth, is that when you go through suffering, when you struggle and get through to the other side, you are going to experience a point in your life where you are called to use all of that wisdom gained and the tools and the skills that you've acquired to now make a difference again. And for me, recognizing that the outdoors have such a healing power, what could we do to serve in a way that continues to protect it and ensures continued access to future generations of individuals that are going to find themselves lost and struggling and desperate and hopeless, and wander into the woods one day and go, man, it's pretty nice out here.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
It's interesting because I looked up that Pacific Crest Trail, and the first thing that comes up on Google for me here was the Trail of the Lost.
Yeah.
Right. Which I mean, there's a lot of people who get lost on the trail by all means, but it was interesting that at that point you wanted to go do that trail, and the first thing I find is the Trail of the Lost. It doesn't go long in Canada by all means, like it gets to British Columbia, Vancouver, but it's a long ass trail. Like,
Yeah.
it's a long trail.
There are countless testimonies out there of individuals that have used through hiking as a means to accomplish their own spiritual journey, their own journey to overcome a struggle that they faced in their life, and simply needed that break from their whatever reality that they were in, put themselves on a trail and went for a walk. When you look at the first person to hike the Appalachian Trail on the East Coast, it was a military veteran coming back from war. And, when asked like, hey, why'd you walk all that way? Well, I needed to walk the war off. And for me at that point in my life, I was committed to the idea of a spiritual and growth focused journey to walk away from the life that I knew and walk into a new one. And when I finished 2,000 plus mile journey, 2,654 miles, I think is what it is, that I would be ready to reinvent my identity, to reinvent my purpose, and move forward and move on with the rest of my life. I have a wife, I have kids, they're in school and they play sports and we have bills. And unfortunately at that time, hiking the PCT was just a fantasy. I couldn't I couldn't walk with my family for 6 months to just go hike every day. I really wanted to, but I couldn't. And that's when I realized that my wife and I had taken a trip in preparation for moving out west from where we were down in Alabama, and came to Montana, a 1-week trip. And I just experienced public land in a way and nature in a way that I didn't know was possible.
And you're from there too, right?
From Montana? No. I was an Army brat, so I kind of lived all over growing up. I had never been to Montana. I had done a bunch of, we had flown in and done training in Colorado and Wyoming and Idaho and Washington. Montana, from my military career, I never ended up in Montana to experience it. But a friend's recommendation when I was looking to move our family to be surrounded by mountains and forests and rivers. And he said, man, Montana is pretty good. And my wife and I took a trip out here. We spent a week trying not to be tourists, just act like we live there, go by the schools, go by the grocery stores, and we took a day trip up to Glacier National Park. And there was a moment standing there on the bank of one of the lakes that's within the park, very remote. It's like a 40+ mile trip out there. And it was a sight that I could not believe that I was looking at in real time, and that this was reality. This was possible to feel and experience this. And that's when I realized I don't need to hike the PCT. I just need to find ways to be able to get groups of people into these types of environments and let the wow factor do its job.
Yeah. Rural and crown land or public land Montana is very similar to where I live. I live right on the Minnesota border, actually. So it's quite remote. There's just nothing around. It's all just water and forest. And hundreds of thousands. Yeah, and me. Yeah, I'm the only guy. Hundreds of thousands of acres of public land as far as you can go, dotted by little town here and hundreds of miles of highway, then another little town, and that's all there is. And I was born here, and I've lived here my entire life. And it wasn't until recently that I realized how taken for granted I had all my life this beautiful and awe-inspiring and reverential landscape that I get to see every day. I mean, my town is literally nestled on a lake that has a river that flows for 140 kilometers to another big, huge lake. And it's like the Ozarks where we are. And then you can fire an arrow and never hit anything. No matter how far north you go, you just end up in the Hudson Bay. And there has been some deep lessons I've learned. And I'm wondering, Brian, because we're coming up on time here, what has nature taught you over and above your military career and the life lessons you've learned there? What has nature taught you, and what do you bring to the people in Two Wolf Foundation because of that?
Be present, man. That's been the golden valuable lesson that nature had, the gift that it's given me, that I spent an entire lifetime focusing on what's next, where we're going, what are we doing. And now to be able to have this resource, the outdoors and nature, to put me in a position to just be present, to be totally focused on what is in my immediate surroundings, accept it, and be okay with it, has been life-changing. And, with the valuable resource that it is, I look at it just like any other method or modality of treatment. Now it's become a necessity. Time in nature, time in the outdoors helps me regulate my emotions. It helps me recenter, and I'm able to approach every other interaction I have in my life with my spouse, with my kids, with you guys. I mean, I spent today out on the mountain scouting. It's hunting season, and I'm out hunting whitetail. But that time allowed me to come back into society, back into my life, into the world, and give it my best self.
See, that's this has been an awesome talk, Brian, because you have discovered something that not very many people have discovered about nature, and that if you just go into it and just be, it speaks to you. And you have to drop the ego and the macho human part of your mind that blocks you from realizing that you are part of nature. I just finished reading the Bhagavad Gita, and in part of it, there's a little bit that in there, and there's a little saying, and I don't remember the words in Sanskrit, but the definition is, "You are that." And when I'm out in nature, and I know you probably feel this, Brian, and John, I'm sure you have too, because you adventure into the mountains. If you can drop all the ego and you can kind of be present, like you said, Brian, there is a spiritual awakening where you realize this, that you are that. You're everything you see, including you. You know, it's the old you're not a drop of water in the ocean. You're the entire ocean in a drop of water. And I think you're alluding to that with your presentness when you have realized the power of nature. And I hope that's what. But of course, yeah.
Right, like where we live at, it's what we created, right? But like go back like centuries and centuries and whatever millennial, whatever that word is, if I cannot say it properly in English.
Millennia.
Thank you. But this is where we're from, right? We're animals, so that connection that you have with nature, that is the mountains or that is the field. Because I know I asked Brian not a long time ago about that land in Montana. It looks cheap, and he's like, "There's nothing there. It's deadlands, man." So, but you still connect with nature. There's something, and that is water, right? There's people who react to water where they can just hear the flow of water and it's going to do it. Some people it's climbing a mountain, hiking, whatever you are, or it's just sitting at a peak where we have it here, right? And what Brian said about the trips that Soft sends you, I know the guys comes to here, Banff and so on, and they train for like weeks at a time, and I was always jealous to see them going, right? The mountain guys, because I'm like, you're having a fucking trip. Oh, now I'm gonna have to do a bip here, but you have a trip here for 2 weeks and those really high-end hotels, and you're snowboarding, you're snowshoeing, you whatever in the mountain. It is awesome, right? But there's a cost to it, and you're right, Brian. There's a cost sometimes that comes now from our own pocket, but there's a way as well to do it for free and still take that home, which I think people don't see or maybe avoid to see, right? Because we're comfortable into looking at that Netflix that you mentioned earlier, or Prime Video or whatever that is now, because it's mindless, and pushing your body to go whatever how many feet up of altitude will hurt, right? There's not a person that you see when they're hiking, like, I don't know, 15 miles peak, who are like, hi, I'm so excited. No, it's like, what the frig, I did this, like, why did I say I would do this? This is BS, and I'm going up, and then you're up and you're like, okay, that's cool, that's cool, until you say I have to go down.
Well, isn't that the reward of anything though, John? You know, like, it might be arduous all the way until you realize the scenery at the end of it, which ended up being the prize. And I would push back on you a little bit, John, in that everybody has access to nature in some way.
Oh yeah.
I mean, if you've got a patch of grass and you can take your socks off it and you can stand on it and close your eyes or look up to the sky, you're in nature. And you can, with some training, teach yourself to ignore the surroundings and realize that you're still on planet Earth. No matter if you're surrounded by the city or not, you're still somehow in nature.
Well, you got to do it. And this is where sometimes it's hard for a lot of people, pushing yourself to say, I'm going to be uncomfortable because whatever reason, right? That is the fact that you're saying your neighbor is going to look at you on that little 5 by 5 foot of patch of grass that you're just doing the exercise there. Who cares, right? Like, and it's not just for uniform. I think this is the other part, right? Like, those things that have been talked today are great for anyone connecting with nature as a phenomenon. I mean, just look at people, and I'm sure Montana is the same. I'm going to the mountain. We're driving to Montana actually next weekend. But every village close to the mountains, those people are overly happy. There's something off, right? They
Jeez,
say,
I wonder why.
But they're connected to something. There's something different there.
I would say that it's probably not new. It's not a new idea, right? That to feel better, to overcome struggle, it takes work.
Mm-hmm.
By being able to continue to advocate for outdoor adjunct therapy, to be able to advocate for wellness in nature, requires an individual to put the work in to go and immerse themselves in it. Yes, they may not have the mountains in their backyard or some grand public land forest to go and walk through, but they can access it. It exists. It's out there. And that is what, in my opinion, people need to be aware of, that, man, I want to feel better. I should put the work in and do what's necessary, do the planning, do the preparation, and go and experience it. And then when you put that work in, there's just such an even greater sense of accomplishment and satisfaction, because you knew you did something that was good for you.
That's a really nice way to end this. You did something good for you by going outside. Brian, if there's any way that we can help promote Two Wolf Foundation through this podcast and through our own private social media, we will. It's been a real honor, because I have a deep respect for people who use their empathy and their compassion to help others. I have a real deep respect for people who can come out the other side of a real difficult and profound situation and then not poison the water of everybody else that's swimming in the same pool. So thank you. It has been a great honor. Where can we find you? Where can people find you online and reach out to you?
Yeah. Those interested in learning more about the programming and Two Wolf Foundation can find us on our website, twowolf.org, TWOWOLF.org. And then we're a one-man show. I'm the executive director and co-founder, and I manage all of our social media, most of our communication, and to get a good glimpse into what we do is on Instagram, at Two Wolf Foundation. And that gives you a real good inside look at what the experience is that Warrior Stewardship provides.
Awesome.
Well, we're gonna so Jason's gonna fly in, and we're gonna go together to Montana, and we're gonna meet and be in the next thing.
Oh, that would be amazing thing to do someday, my friend. Yeah.
We'll get you guys across the border and load it up in the trucks, and we'll make a project.
Escape. We need a Hilux, man. I want a Hilux like overseas.
If I could get my hands on a fleet of diesel Hiluxes, we would be in business.
We can talk about it after this podcast. I have, anyways. So it's been a pleasure, man. Thank you so much, and everything you said about Instagram, the website will all be put under this, so people reach you. And thanks again.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me on tonight.
Okay, bye.
Peace.
Bye.